All right. Good afternoon. We've got a special guest on with us, Marc Cohodes. I'm pronouncing the last name correctly, right?
Bang up job.
All right. Awesome. Thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
I figured where we'd start a little history lesson. Who are you? How did you get into investing? And, sort of what gets you to, and before we get into the cannabis space, I sort of want to lead up to that point, right? How'd you get into the industry?
So let's see. So I'm 65 years old. I've been at this, whatever you want to call it, game, industry, whatever, since 1982. That's when I started with the Northern Trust in Chicago. I graduated Babson College with an undergraduate degree in finance and actually American Studies. I have my CFA, which I achieved in 1984, though I never use it. I never use it in my title. So I started at the bank in 82. The market was awful. Interest rates were through the roof. I was the youngest investment person they ever hired in the history of the bank, which was like around since the Chicago fire. And they used to get down on me because I was too bullish back in 82. I owned Disney when the late Irwin Jacobs greenmailed them. I owned Coca-Cola as a yield stock, Archer Daniels before the great switch from sugar to fructose. Now I guess everyone wants to switch soda back to sugar.
Right.
So I was too bullish. So then I ended up leaving in 85 to go work with David Rocker, which that was in the hedge fund business. In 85, he was starting up something called Rocker Partners with $20 million. I was at the hedge fund since 2009. Closed that. We ended up with in excess of 2.2 billion. Closed the fund in 2009.
Nice.
Took some time off and just sort of been investing for myself since.
Nice.
So most people in the space or in the industry know me as a short seller. I've gone after some huge frauds and companies in my life with decent success, given how hard it is.
Right.
And again, most people know me for helping take down FTX and Silvergate Bank and Signature Bank, and Wirecard, Imetics, Novastar, things like that. There's 2 Harvard Business School cases written about me that are out there, a couple books I'm in that are out there. So I kind of enjoy it. I was never good at school, but I've always had the investing bug. And I think if it wasn't for investments, I would have been working in a car wash for my life. But I kind of like it. Keeps me young, keeps me jumping. And I'm on Twitter at Alder Lane Eggs, and I try to keep it jumping, exciting, and things like that. So
nice.
I like certain situations. I'm not shorting stocks anymore because I think it's too dangerous, especially
it's difficult
in this administration and in this wild market that has plenty of liquidity. So I pick and choose my spots. I travel a lot. I'm in California now. I also live in Montana, and
nice.
Just enjoying life.
Nice. That sounds good. Well, so some of the names you mentioned, right? Is it Cardwire and then FTX, of course, are very familiar to me. What is it about your approach or your investment process? How do you spot these things? What do you look at? Like, what kind of approach do you take there?
On shorts, if you will, or fraud?
Yeah. Like, how did you know those companies were maybe not doing things right?
I always say I bet the jockey, not the horse. And I always look for, I have a sense for what a bad actor is. I have something called a wig indicator. If a CEO wears a wig, I think I'm 95% on the wig indicator. Exactly. So that shows that you're legit. So I think people would say I'm an expert in financial crime, whether it was subprime mortgages or business development companies, or, Wirecard was laundering money for all sorts of bad actors, first through cards, whether they be Visa or MasterCard cards, and then they did it sort of wirelessly. And it was a big deal at the time. And the funny thing is, when Wirecard went under and they failed miserably, then all of a sudden crypto really kicked up in a big way, and crypto banks and crypto rails and things like that. And after FTX failed, Signature failed, was seized, Silvergate was seized.
Republic Bank.
I look for add-on effects of companies that roll with and enable bad actors. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff out there on me and FTX. And what appealed to me about Sam Bankman-Fried is he was a media darling, but his story never held up.
Right.
And one of the things is he never had any mentors. Okay. And in this business, with very few exceptions, you're sort of taught the tools of the trade by somebody.
Right.
You know, Druckenmiller had Soros. Jimmy Rogers had Soros. There's a lot of people who work for Steinhardt. I was mentored by a fellow named Al Jackson. I mean, these are high pedigree guys. And Sam Bankman-Fried, not only did his story make no sense, but he wasn't mentored by anybody. And when anyone ever asked him questions of things that were more serious in nature, one, he couldn't answer. Two, he couldn't look at anyone straight in the face. Three, he had this nervous leg movement, and I thought the thing was just beyond bizarre. And the more I checked into it, the more I thought it was fake. So I went at him pretty hard, and as luck would have it, he failed, blew up miserably, and he's now in prison. Now, someone may pardon him, which would be a shame, but he ended up in Huskow, which is what he deserves.
Yep, with Diddy, last I heard.
Yeah, well, yeah. Who knows anymore? I mean, I don't believe everything I read or less of what I see. So
yeah. Well, so now it's mostly long. You're investing for yourself, or not for a hedge fund, or not for anyone else.
It's just for myself, my son, and I put my thoughts, or 10% of my thoughts, on Twitter with what I know. And it's just for myself, and I'm just crazy for this Glasshouse Brands, which is sort of how we met. And I think it's a once in a 10 to 20 year situation. It reminds me a lot of Archer Daniels when I was long that, and I mentioned it earlier about the switch from sugar into high fructose corn syrup. I mean, what I know for sure is Prohibition never works. It never works. It didn't work with booze. It didn't work with gambling. I mean, gambling, when you and I were younger, if you wanted to bet on sports, you either went to Las Vegas or you had a bookie.
Right.
And the bookie tended to be involved in some form of organized crime, which is fine. It's just sort of the way it is.
Right.
You'd bet, you'd pay the guy. If you didn't pay the guy, he'd do some harm to you one way or the other. And the government sort of did away with that, and it made gambling legal. It made online gambling legal. So, and it's a states' rights deal. You can't gamble online in California, but you can in Montana and a whole lot of other states. And it's very regulated. It's very organized. And it's so prevalent now. I mean, you have LeBron James doing in-season commercials for DraftKings. And again, when I was little, the NFL suspended Alex Karras and Paul Hornung, both in the Hall of Fame. They suspended them for 6 months for associating with gamblers.
Right.
So I see and have seen what goes on in cannabis, which is a $50 billion legal regulated industry, illegal federally, but legal in certain states. And it's just a complete clusterfuck. I mean, it's an absolute clusterfuck of things. So I think Prohibition there is going to end. I'm all for, the plant itself, whether it's hemp or cannabis, being legalized with restrictions.
Right.
And people from the Treasury have reached out to me. People from DHS have reached out to me, and I have a plan. I mean, Tyson is all over it, and he's right to be all over it. And my plan is simple. Most people who are against it mention kids or youth, or causes psychosis in kids and youth. Well, this is not a youth product, just like Jack Daniels is not a youth product. So I don't want to hear about youth. It should be strongly age gated and enforced at under 21. You don't see kids walking the streets with a fifth of Jack Daniels in a bag. You don't
Right.
see kids walking into Caesar's world at Caesar's Palace at gambling tables. So my thing would be, you age gate this thing hard at under 21. If you're caught selling to a minor, it's 1 year in prison, no questions asked. Just like
Right.
if you're caught carrying a gun in New York City, you go right to jail. So I think you age gate it. I think you test it. I think you trace it. I think you label it. I think the people who are against THC, I think you federally tax on THC levels.
Sure.
And if you're against, the stuff that makes you too high, then you have a higher excise tax on it. The states then tax on it. And I think interstate is the key. And I think cannabis is going to be to the United States what wine and California wine was to the wine industry. If you roll the wine industry back to the 70s, there was Mondavi and very few others.
Right.
Now California wine industry is a huge industry nationally, and it's a huge industry worldwide.
Right.
So I'm taking the wine template and overlaying that into cannabis. The president wants a strong border. He wants cartels out. He's not hot on China, which is CCP.
Yep.
And I think when you legalize this fully, deschedule it fully, I think it helps the legitimate guys, and I think it's the end of the cartels and the CCP. So when it happens, I don't know. I think it's going to happen sooner rather than later, but to me, Glass House has the best management and the best business model out there. I think the amount of money they can make by growing cannabis in California and selling it, through other states and even internationally is huge.
Right.
So I like the management a lot. I like the model a lot. I like their position a lot. The space is people are very down on the space. They're very negative. Whenever there's good news, it's met by all the naysayers.
Right.
But uranium used to be that way. Coal used to be that way. Resources used to be that way. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when someone discovered a hole in Cigar Lake in Canada with the uranium, and the uranium stocks were down so damn much, it wasn't even funny. And if you would have said I liked uranium, you would have been booed off the stage.
Right. Right.
So this is a growth business. It does help people medically. I had my shoulder rearranged by a horse 3 years ago. I got run into by a horse. So I broke my arm in multiple places, shattered my shoulder. So I have 9 pins and 2 plates. And what got me through was I didn't take any oxy. They prescribed me oxy all day long. But what got me through was cannabis. And, Glass House makes this salve, this balm that I use on it. It makes me, it's 50 times better than Icy Hot.
Right.
And I think it's where it's going to go. Plant-based medicine is a good thing, not a bad thing.
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely.
So I think I don't mind being alone. I don't mind being a contrarian. I don't mind standing in the middle of the ring with everyone booing me. But I happen to think it's fantastic, and I think the space is going to be great.
Well, and so how did you get to this space? Did you see or get introduced to the Glass House team first, then look at cannabis, or were you looking at cannabis and then trying to figure out who's going to win in that space?
So that's a good question. So back when I was in the hedge fund, my right-hand man, if you will, is a guy named Russell Line, and he works at Park West.
Okay.
And he calls me up in October of 2023, and he said, you have to look at this Glass House. And I said, like, why? And he sort of explained to me the story, their capacity, great management, the whole thing, the contrarian deal. And I said, you're completely out of your mind. So he sent me some stuff to read, and he said, you should go visit them and see their place, which is just beyond incredible.
Yep. So
I read the stuff, and I went down to see him, and I said, fuck, this guy's right. So ever since, I own an awful lot of stock. And I'm just like a huge fan. I think this thing is going to be something. So the guy who used to work for me turned me on to this. It had nothing per se to do with cannabis. I've learned an awful lot about cannabis in the space ever since.
Yep.
And it's sort of, the gang of misfit toys.
Yep.
But through my money laundering work in Canada, and again, I'm easy to figure out on the internet. There's plenty out there about me.
Right.
Through my money laundering financial crime thing on the internet, Treasury reached out to me, and then we start talking about safe banking. So, it's sort of everything is coming together. I like the space. It's on Prohibition right now. I think it's going to change. I love Glasshouse's model. I like their management.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. I think we're going to get safe banking. I like that. I think we're going to get uplisting.
Mm-hmm.
I like that we're going to trade on the exchanges. I find it hard to reconcile how Trump is so down on Canada for all the right reasons.
Right.
That he lets the Canadian cannabis stocks trade here, but the U.S. stocks can only trade in Canada. It's just terribly wrong and wrong-headed.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of positive events and catalysts that can happen. I don't need them all to happen to win. I don't need, one is a huge jump over zero.
Right.
But, luck favors the well-prepared, as I would say. And I think the people who have liked this space, I think a lot of things are coming together. And, and finally on the political side or on the regulatory side, Trump's looking for wins.
Yep.
And everyone's kidding themselves about, this being a democracy now. This country is run by Trump, and Trump.
Right.
So the new DEA head will do what Trump tells him to do. And the attorney general will do what Trump tells her to do. And there's enough push for this to happen, and he's transactional enough that when this does happen, I think there's going to be, huge money to be made. And, is it like where crypto was a couple of years ago? Yeah, but it could be even bigger because I think a lot of crypto is just completely fake.
Right.
And some of the legitimate companies here are legit. And it very may be the MSOs, the multi-state operators, will end up buying from Glasshouse, because Glasshouse can grow at roughly 100 a pound rather than 800 a pound of the East Coast guys.
Right.
They'll buy from Glasshouse and they'll sell Glasshouse products interstate, just like, East Coast companies buy California wine and sell it in East Coast wine stores. It's not like, imagine being in a world. Where do you live? Where are you?
I'm East Coast, out of Bethesda, Maryland.
Okay. So imagine in Bethesda, Maryland, in Maryland, you're only able to buy Maryland wine, wine that's made in Maryland, produced with Maryland grown grapes.
Yep.
At a price 10 times higher than California wine with California grown grapes.
Right.
It's just insane. It's not free market. It makes no sense, but that's the current rules of the road. But if you're able in Maryland to buy California wine with California grapes at half the price that you pay for Maryland wine grown with Maryland grapes, it's a better experience for everybody.
Yep.
So it's going to happen. The timing of it is uncertain. Could happen tonight, could happen a week, month, or a year from tonight. I don't know. But the setup to me is incredible. And that's how people need to think about it. And you don't have to have all your portfolio in it, but it's a reasonable bet because things have, sentiment-wise, we're kind of there.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting because to your point about when it can happen, as I understand it, it's really just a signature away, right? At least relative to Schedule 3, if the AG signs off on it, we're there. Granted, there could be other steps that happen along the way, and it's still unclear whether or not there'll be an ALJ hearing, though it sounds like maybe at this point there might not be one, but the fast approach is simply seemingly a signature away. So we'll see how long that takes.
And it's just, my main a theme that I always, try to help people with, no matter, you're doing well or making money or losing money, is I always encourage people to think it through
Yeah.
rather than this FOMO or YOLO or meme or whatever it is. It's just kind of like think it through on how this can work.
Right.
Think it through that, shortages are followed by gluts and gluts by shortages, and prohibition is bad. And when things change, it's been a long drought for the people who've believed in the space.
Right.
When things change, you may get 2, 3, 4, 5, or a decade of really good news. And when you get really good news, I think the liquor lobby is on top of this. I think liquor distributors are going to want to distribute THC drinks. I think they're going to want to distribute glass house flower, want to distribute glass house joints, want to distribute glass house gummies all across the country, because it's clear that cannabis and THC related products, naturally though, are taking huge share from booze and others.
Right.
So if you're a liquor distributor and your business is down 20%, the one way you get it back up is start putting cannabis related products on your route, in your truck, however you sell things. And it's just an obvious thing. So yeah, we have the pharma lobby against us. We've always had the pharma lobby against us, because they'd rather people become addicted to their products. But this is clearly the way to go. And I'd say to the guys at SAM and the lobbies against it, kids and youth have no place in this discussion.
Right.
So the fact that everyone wants to mention kid and youth in their discussion is just ill-founded and wrong-headed, and that part should end. It's an adult product. There's plenty of warnings that are out there, but prohibition doesn't work. And if they make it harder for legal, they make it easier for illicit and the CCP, and that's exactly what Trump doesn't want. And it's American made and American grown, and it's an American industry, so why not export it across the world?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's been challenging relative to having this whole bifurcation between hemp and I guess now intoxicating hemp and then THC based products. It seems like when people are zeroing in on the, cannabis for kids, they'll lift up as an example the intoxicating hemp that you can find at, seemingly any smoke shop around the country, unless the state's restricted it. And so that's been a real challenge, right? It's just sort of this weird, treating intoxicating hemp one way, cannabis or THC another way. It seems like if they can get these things lined up, if the industry can get these things lined up with the politicians, man, that would clean the runway significantly as well.
Well, it's the gang of misfit toys that I'm trying to unite. And all these guys are baseball players. Some people want to focus on the composition of an ETF instead of bettering the industry or fighting for the industry.
We're familiar with that one.
There's just and all that is noise.
Right.
When you're in a prohibition state, okay, whether it's gambling, where you finance the mob, but now the government gets a take. Whether it was prohibition, where you drink bathtub gin, where you'd either go blind or die, and now you have booze legal and regulated and taxed. The ATF. Even abortion. You can believe in it or not believe in it. So it's completely up to you.
Right.
But when it was illegal and there were back alley abortions, women weren't safe. Women died. Women would get, bad things would happen. But now that it's legal, at least it's done by a doctor. You may or may not believe it. You may or may not want it done, but at least it's safe. And now we're moving it to cannabis. So when there's no clear law, you get synthetics, which are fake, which I think will be banned and should be banned, which has too much THC. You have shit showing up at gas stations or tobacco shops, which are now smoke shops. Just if you label it, if you test it, if you trace it, if you have hard under 21, which is a no, you tax it properly. I mean, cannabis in the state of California is the second tax generator, and I think next to real estate.
Right.
So it's a huge windfall for states. And DHS has told me illicit cannabis, and or hemp or whatever you want to call it, is 15 times the size of the legal market.
It's crazy,
So,
right?
so the market for it is big. The market is growing. Everyone wants in it. Everyone wants to trade the stocks on the New York Stock Exchange or NASDAQ. Everyone needs to be refinanced. It's a huge, huge, huge industry. And it's just being held up by Richard Nixon, 1970 rule.
Right.
And it's kind of 55 years ago, if my math's correct. And it's kind of like, as Reagan would say, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall. I mean, hell, it's time. It's time. If you want to play, great. If you don't want to play, don't use it. If you have a problem, if people say they don't like the smell outside, well, great. Ban it within 200 feet of a building. I don't care. Do whatever you want to do, but you can't roll back, and you can't make illegal or throw extra rules on a prohibition market that's $50 billion in size. You just can't. You just can't do it.
Well, the vast majority of Americans, either want it to use it, and that's the majority. Even a bigger majority is okay with other people using it, even though they might not use it themselves. So
it polls 70% favorably. And if I were to sit down with Trump, or if I were to have Trump's ear, and I may have his ear indirectly, I would simply say that his legacy, other than the big new beautiful bill or the stronger borders, all that's fantastic. Yep. His legacy could be he could turn the Republican Party away from your grandfather's Republican Party into the modern Republican Party, which includes young people, which includes boomers, which includes seniors, which basically has respect for people to make their own choice in what they want to do.
Right.
And again, when I was younger, I knew people who would use Red Man playing baseball, that leafy tobacco shit you put in there. Yeah. I know people who would use Copenhagen, which would be the snuff in their lip. I knew people who would do that, and it eventually made people sick. And what do you have now? You have Zyn. Right. You have So Zyn, that ZYN, I think Philip Morris owns it, is probably 10 times the size of the market of what the old leafy chewing tobacco and the snuff used to be, right? It's like 10 times the size. And again, when I was younger, I was short Wine Cooler, which was Canandaigua wine, and Wine Cooler went out of business.
Yep.
And people came with the seltzer drinks, the White Claw or stuff like that, which is a huge market. Now people have the THC drinks, and the THC drinks, could end up being sold in ballparks. They could be sold in concerts. They can end up being sold in grocery stores. Any place where you have the 21 age gate. And it's going to take market share from beer. Because if you drink 4 beers and people get sick and people throw up all over the place, the THC
and fight.
Fight. The THC drinks make you mellow, and they don't give you a hangover, and they're better for you, and they're not bloating. Yep. And so gang, this is where it's going to go. So you have various horses to pick from.
Yep.
And I think it's a hugely investable theme. I mean, NVIDIA was on the balls of its ass because they had problems with graphic chips for games, and the stock was in the tank. And all of a sudden, they turned on the switch for AI, and it's the biggest market cap out there. AI and various things in China. So things change. And if I would have mentioned AI chips 2-3 years ago, I would have been laughed off the stage. If I would say play NVIDIA for the coming AI revolution, everyone would have laughed. And they would have said, well, shit, graphics and gaming is 95% of their business. Well, no one gives a shit about graphics or gaming anymore. Everyone only cares about AI.
Right.
Well, if you get cannabis or THC drinks or the space going, no one's going to give a rat's ass, about all this nonsense going on.
Right.
They're going to say, how do I invest in this thing? And, to me, you buy the low-cost producer that sells the highest quality product at the best price.
And I think the marketplace will change over time when we get there, right? When I think about the alcohol industry, which is seemingly dominated by sort of 2 to 3 big players, and you can still have craft along the way, but the space will probably change quite dramatically as we get more acceptance, legalization, things like that.
Yeah, I think if there's, let's just say 40 or 50 publicly traded companies out there, and let's say half of them could go broke if nothing happens because their balance sheets are so great.
Right.
I think you'll see a huge cram down. I think you'll see huge consolidation. And I think you'll see probably the liquor companies buying, minority stakes, 10 to 25%, and a
Right.
handful of them, and say, this is our horse.
And the
Right.
crazy thing is that the valuations today, and even, not too far from today, I mean, they're really, really low. It's couch change for these alcohol companies. I mean, it is nothing in terms of what they're used to spending.
Well, I've talked to a few of them about investing in Glasshouse, and
Yep.
I think that's going to happen.
Nice.
No one believes me now, which is completely fine. I don't even care.
Yep.
But they're just waiting for some form of legal clarity
Right.
because look, I'll just use it as an example. Take energy drinks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Energy drinks, again, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, were nothing, right?
Right.
You had Red Bull and a band of misfits. Well, now you have Red Bull, you have Monster, and you have Celsius.
Yep.
Monster, Coke owns some, Celsius, Pepsi owns some, and Red Bull has so much money and generates so money, they don't need anyone.
They're their own entity.
But what if the energy drink guys wanted to get into cannabis drinks?
Right.
What if they wanted to get into a natural cannabis drink?
Well, and you see that already the other way, right? I saw Cureleaf has one. Now TrueLeaf has an energy-based cannabis drink or hemp drink, I think, technically. But yeah, you'll see plenty of that. I think as it gets normal, there'll be, when you talk about tobacco to Zins, cannabis will see that in different product forms and structures.
So I think that's going to happen. I think the landscape's going to change. You need vision. You need the best operators.
Yep.
And again, everyone likes Green Thumb. I wouldn't touch Green Thumb with a 10-foot pole simply because the guy.
Our biggest holding.
Well, that's your guy's issue. Because the guy running it is more focused on you guys than he is on running his business. I think focus matters.
Right.
And you need to focus on what makes your business better, what makes the industry better.
The industry better is key, right?
People in the industry can't stand Kovler. They all hate him. They all think something's terribly wrong with him because he doesn't give a crap about the industry. He only cares about himself. And at the end of the day, the industry, they all play baseball, right? They all play baseball. They use a ball, they use a mitt, they all use a baseball bat. Now, there's different brands of baseball. The Dodgers may have a high payroll. The Brewers may have a low payroll. They may do it with young guys, old guys. Some guys do it with the 3-run home run. Some guys use it with speed. Some guys do whatever. But that's just by team. But overall, the MLB is out to better the game of baseball. And it would be great to see the cannabis hemp space all work together to make the industry better than what I'd call the gang of misfit toys, right? Because it doesn't do anyone any good to pick on people about composition in an ETF where the group is on the balls of its ass. It doesn't do any good. Right. And as I like to say, when I played sports, albeit at a high school low level, I've been on some shitty teams. I've been on some great teams. I won the city championship with the Northern Trust in 16-inch softball in 1984. We won the Industrial League thing, and I actually played on that team. We won the entire league. Right?
Nice.
So on some horrible teams. But if you're on a horrible team, it's not because of the manager, right? And it ain't because of the first baseman, and it's not because of the pitcher. It's a team. It's everybody. So when the industry gets better, right, and then an index lags, then you have a beef. But when the industry is terrible and the industry is on the balls of its ass, picking on ETF formation or what you're in or what you're not in, to me, it's like pissing on a house fire. It's like 400 pounds saying I'm going to switch to Diet Coke. Doesn't matter. Let's get the industry cooking again. Let's get people thinking. And then if people want to be critical on better times, be critical then. But don't be critical when everyone's fighting for survival, everyone's trying to keep it going, and everyone's pulling for the industry.
Yeah, that cohesiveness in the industry is key. And I can say that just even from my own experience, being a small investment management company in the space, we're members of the ICI, of which, State Street and Vanguard and BlackRock, of course, are all members and carry the lion's shares of the assets in our industry. But that's an organization where we can all come together to try to get, legislation, rules, changes that are favorable for our industry, even though we leave that environment and then go out and compete against each other to sell products. But there's got to be some mechanism where, in your industry, you're working on the same team to try to advance the things that are better for your industry, but then also, be able to compete, at the same time. So seeing more of that in the cannabis space is desperately needed. I would say it feels like in the last 6 to 12 months, I've seen more of that cohesiveness within the industry. Obviously not entirely, and it's, missing, unfortunately, probably one of the bigger players, but it seems like they are moving closer together and a bit more organized. And, a lot of that seems to be, led in part by, people like Jason Wild or Kim Rivers or, Charlie or Boris. And so I think they'll get there. And I think like you, I think we're close, and they're learning how to play the political game a little bit better.
I think the people you mentioned are fantastic. And I think, Kyle at Glass House is trying to help the people who've been in prison for using, carrying, selling the product. He wants people released. And I think Graham is one of the finest operators I've ever met in any space. I think he's nothing short of fantastic. So the people who you met, I think are fantastic. And I think they're doing the best they can. I mean, I specifically call out Kovler because his comments, one are not important, two, just a bad look, and three, when you put out a Twitter poll, you put out a Twitter poll through your proxy saying who's right, me or him, and the poll shows I'm right, you have a significant problem. So if you're going to put out your own poll, at least have it rigged enough that you win rather than I win. And again, I have nothing against them, but if you're born on third base, because your family is worth billions, you're born on third base. You just didn't hit a triple. So we just need everyone to come around, and we need everyone to think, and we need everyone to try to pull the rope in the same way until, things change. And then if you want to take shots at people, you want to take shots at me, go right ahead. Right. But at least we'll at least be able to do it on better and higher footing.
Absolutely. Well, so let's talk about, the raid on the Glass House Farms, right? I know you've gotten a lot of comments, at least on Twitter, which again, doesn't really represent the real world, but nonetheless, talk about how that affects your investment thesis, what you're seeing, does it change your view in any way? Does it give you some hesitation or any caution, or, what's your take on everything that went down there?
Well, I know a lot, and they don't want me talking about it because I think it all does blow over. I mean, my bottom line is it's a nothing burger.
Right.
It was tremendous theater. And, Kyle actually supports Trump, and, they made a big deal out of the Trump Newsom thing. So I don't really want to get into that. What I do know, and I think it'll be explained in when they come with their numbers, is that, there's 92 full-time Glass House employees in Ventura County.
Right.
92. Now, the government said that 360 were arrested, detained, whatever they want to say.
Right. But even the government didn't call them Glass House employees.
They're simply not Glass House employees. Some were welders, some were plumbers, some, a lot are subcontractors.
Some were citizens.
Some were citizens, some were general contractors of people, because Glass House is expanding. like that. So, I'm getting my house redone in Montana. I hire a general contractor to do it. He hires subcontractors, which include plumbers, electricians, woodworkers, mechanical, siding, gardeners, things like that. The subcontractors then hire employees. They can hire laborers, they can hire welders, they can hire pipe fitters, they can hire that. Now, if the reliance is that everyone's legal because they have papers that were either forged or doctored, that's not Marc Cohodes' problem who owns the house. That's not even the GC's problem who hired people. That's the problem of the guy who forged documentation. The fact that they were all at Glasshouse's facility is not a Glasshouse thing. And I think there's a lot of, let's just say, reasonable doubt of, they made a big deal of the kids, right? So I know Graham quite well. I know Kyle quite well. Kyle used to be a cop. This is Graham Farrar's life. I mean, this is his life. Okay. Did Graham Farrar hire kids? Not a chance. Not a chance in holy fucking hell. Okay. Could the co-op have hired someone underage who used fake documentation? Possibly. But it's also equally possible that whoever picked up 10 kids running in fields, brought them inside Glasshouse, took a picture, and floated the picture out. And the thing that's really funky about the whole deal is they showed a lot of pictures of people and brown people running through the fields with smoke bomb canisters off. Glasshouse doesn't own any fields. Glasshouse doesn't have any fields where stuff grows. They're all indoor in a facility, in a glass house.
I would imagine a bit secure as well, so people can't just run around. And
so those pictures, which imply glass house, is just false and misleading. And the thing that is just sort of bothersome is they say of the 360 whatever people who are detained, some American citizens who weren't allowed to make phone calls, weren't allowed to wash off the tear gas for 72 hours, and weren't even told why they were detained or where they were detained. The part that gets bothersome is, you have a human right deal going on. There's a huge community of people who've worked there forever and ever, just doing their job, making a living. They weren't harming anybody. And given the amount of illicit cannabis out there, cartel farms, CCP, money laundering, and crime, it's just a funky use of resources to do something with Glasshouse. So does it change my view? No, it doesn't change my view. It's just a pain in the ass because they're really cooking, and I think they're doing really well. And it's just a distraction on management. It's a distraction on a lot of things. And they did a refinance. They took out their high cost PIK preferred debt, and they announced that. And they did it during this entire period, and I participated. I put in excess of $1 million additionally to what I own in the common, in the preferred. So I not only believe and think it's great, I believe incrementally on what topically is bad news. And the stock, the day of the raid, I think was 880. And the other day it hit 450 or 460 or 470 or, wherever it was. And, I bought even more. Yeah. So it'll all sort itself out. I look forward to the day where people look back and say, yeah, I remember that when they had that crazy ass raid. But, they're not saying woe is me. Right. I think this passes, and they're just working through it. And if I was down in Southern California, I would help them. I would help them pick. But raiding Glasshouse and arresting a 60-year-old woman who's brown skinned filling the company vending machine with masks and pens and tags. It doesn't do the world any good.
Well, that's definitely an area where our politicians, in addition to fixing, where cannabis sits, just common sense immigration rules.
It's exactly right.
Yeah.
It's just, just think it through, and the people who want to pile on, Kovler's trolls, if you will, fine, pile on all you want, right? But at the end of the day, they produce and grow a great product. They sell it at a great price. They've won Golden Bears for the best product grown in California, which is quite an accomplishment. Their balm, which I put on my shoulder daily, relieves all pain and gives me greatest movement. And I think the consumability alone of their products for wellness and health are key. I think they're going to sell the product across the world in a couple of years. And they have a deal to develop hemp and hemp-related fixes, if you will, with the University of California, Berkeley. And a state-run university just doesn't sign up on a joint venture with anybody. Right. So to me, it checks all the boxes, and we were sailing along, and I got hit in the head with the back of a shovel a couple Thursdays ago, but that's life. Stuff happens. So you just sort of roll with it. You deal with it. You take your lumps with the stock. And I bought more, and I
say not just sticking with it, but adding to it. So that's great.
Oh, hell yeah. That's what I'm doing. Right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm either walking away. I told my son, my 38-year-old son, manage his money. He owns a ton of this thing. I said, Max, we're either walking away with the trophy, the check, the beautiful girl, or I know you were just at Dover, or we're going to have a wadded up race car, and we're going to be in the infield care center and traction. So there's no middle ground here. We either got the trophy or we have a broken race car.
Right. That is where we've got to periodically remind people these are OTC traded microcap stocks. There is more volatility ahead. Even with good news coming, I'm a believer the good news is coming, but I also believe we're not done with the volatility. There's more coming.
I don't mind chaos. I operate well in chaos. I've lived through chaos. I've lived through the FBI knocking on my door and telling me not to tweet about a guy who was bribing. No, it's true. Bribing a senator who ended up in prison. I mean, there's again, you Google and check me out. You Google Marc Cohodes FBI. There's plenty out there on me. So I'm not afraid of a tilt. I'm not afraid of controversy. I'm not afraid of chaos. And to me, look, Glass House is a $5 stock. They have RSU and options struck at 50 or 60. That's 10 times. What's the risk here? Dead money? Right. Risk goes back to 4. Okay, fine, no problem. But I'm in it for the ride, and I like it. And I make no excuses. So we'll see.
All right. Well, fantastic. We'll end it there. Thanks to everyone that tuned in. We really appreciate it. Marc, thanks for making time. Thanks for being an advocate of the cannabis space. I know everyone appreciates it. We definitely appreciate it. And as things progress, we'd love to have you back on to bring some more updates in.
I'll be back. But, also thanks for being you. You have your job is tireless. You take a lot of heat. And I give you a lot of credit for sticking with it. And as I always say, you can't lose the game until you let go of the rope. So don't let go of the rope. And if you don't let go of the rope, you always got a good shot.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. And thanks again for everyone tuning in. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Before investing, carefully consider the investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses found in the prospectus, available at AdvisorShares.com.